Hi guys, in today's video we'll be taking a look at how you can put pauses in your program so you can investigate what certain variables are whilst your program's running in C# using Visual Studio. So let's have a look. So the first thing we need to do is launch Visual Studio. And then we need to create a new project. Console app.NET Framework C#. And we will call this one Breakpoints. And we'll start by mapping out a basic application. So we will speak to the user, create some variables. Actually, we'll create some random variables. Add some breakpoints. Crikey, I can't type today. Add some breakpoints. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So console.writeLine, we'll just, oh crikey, my language has changed. We'll say our user, and we will create some variables. So we'll create a string variable. We'll assign it a value. Actually, no, we'll use some characters like so. We'll make a random number generator. So var random equals new random. We'll generate some numbers. So we'll say var a equals random.next. Var b equals random.next. We've got some random numbers. And now we will add some breakpoints. Let's actually add one more. So if a is more than b, we'll write something in the console. Console.writeLine, a was more than b. So what is a breakpoint? So you see these lines down the side of your code window here. You can actually click in this gutter and add these breakpoints. So if you hover over them, it tells you that that's a breakpoint for program.cs because that's the file we're in. And it's on line 17 and it starts at character 13. Breakpoints, and it's in the main function of the program class. So your program class, main function, line 17. And what will happen when we run our program, when the program reaches line 17 or line 14 or line 16, it will pause and we'll be able to have a look at what some of the variables were at that time when the program paused. So if I hit start, you see instantly before we did anything, it's paused and brought us back in, and you can see this yellow arrow indicates which line of code is currently paused. And you can press continue, which is where the start button used to be, to move on to the next breakpoint. So you'll see I've now gone on to line 16. If I hover over string variable, it's null. Null is essentially no value. That's what null means. It's just a shorthand for nothing. And the reason it's nothing is because this line hasn't ran yet. You see, if we then skip to the next line, string variable now equals James does stuff. So you can hover over any of the variables around here. You can see actually hover over this argument for the main function. You see it's a string array, but it's got nothing in it. So let's add breakpoints to the rest of these and we'll follow through. So now we're going to create our random number generator. Our a is equal to 0 because it still hasn't ran this line yet. Instead of with an integer, you don't have a null. An integer can't be null. So it just has a default value of 0. So that's something to bear in mind as well. Click next. So now it's generated A, and you can see we've got our random number in here, and we'll now let it generate B. And if we hover over here, we've got our B number. And now I'm just going to add a breakpoint at the last brace. So you can actually add breakpoints on braces as well to catch you before you reach the end of a function. We'll click continue. And it looks like A was actually larger than B. So we'll write that into the console. And then our program won't end because we've caught ourselves with this breakpoint here. And I'll just open up the console. You can see here we've got our hello user, A was more than B. So this is really useful, especially with variables that are generated from functions, or as you start to have multiple functions and they're nested within each other, you're able to effectively check what's going on in your program at a given time. So we'll run this again. This would be useful if I wanted to check the results from these functions. And that's basically it. Sometimes when you're writing a program, you think the code's going to do one thing, and actually you find that it does something completely different. And these breakpoints are what help you debug that situation. You write some code, it doesn't work how you think it will. That's essentially what a bug is. And then you have to go in, and quite a lot of the time you're making some guesses about where it's going wrong, and then you go and put some breakpoints around where you think it's going wrong, and then you make some assertions to yourself. You're like, well, I think A might equal, a particular value at a particular time, and it really should, in some cases, be a specific value. And then actually you go and put some breakpoints in there and you run your program, and then actually when you get to the A and B breakpoints, you realize, oh, actually that next function isn't doing what I thought it was, or actually what I should have here is a 0 and a 100 because I was expecting that B number to be somewhere between 0 and 100. So it just helps you kind of diagnose a problem whilst the program's running. Then you can make your changes. One other thing about breakpoints, and this only applies to certain projects, is actually you can edit the code whilst the program's paused. And it doesn't always work 100% perfectly, but say if you've got a loop, let's do that actually. So let's just stop this and let's make a loop. So we'll say while, we'll make a new integer. So we'll say integer I equals 0. We'll make a new loop and we'll say while I is less than 100. We'll run the loop and then we'll say I equals I plus 1. So what should happen here is this should loop 100 times, and then eventually I will equal 100, so the loop will end. And what we'll do is we'll keep an eye on it and we'll set a breakpoint. So we'll press start. So we've jumped straight into our loop. I is currently 0 because this is the first loop, and we'll press next, and then I will be equal to 1, and we'll press next. I will equal to 2. So it's just looping and it's adding 1 every time. But actually, whilst it's running, we could change this 1 to 2, and we'll run it again. And you'll see now it's 4, now it's 6, now it's 8, and actually we could change it to 50 just to really speed things up. Add that, and we're now at 58. And this time we jumped straight out because I became more than 100. So that's an example of where you can actually update certain bits of code whilst the code's running. I have had problems with certain project types. It's fine for like Windows Forms, for modern Windows applications, for console applications. It seems to break down a bit when you're making ASP.NET websites. You probably don't know what any of those things are, but it's important to know that that sort of on-the-fly recoding of stuff can sometimes give you a different result, and you could be chasing your tail when actually it's just because you edited the code whilst it was live. So what you should probably do is go away and experiment with breakpoints in your own application and see if you can find a use for them in your day-to-day programming. Hi guys, well done for making it to the end of the video.
Just a quick heads up that there is a link to the project files from today's session in the video description. If you have any questions about anything we've covered today, feel free to leave me a comment. And as always, I will see you in the next one.